You ever notice how silence makes people uncomfortable? Someone gets loud, defensive, tries to bait you, and you just sit there calm, unshaken. They start fidgeting, talking faster, trying to fill the silence, because silence exposes truth. Silence shows control. It says, you can yell, you can spin, you can project, but I'm not stepping into your storm. That's the power of emotional detachment. When you stop feeding chaos with reaction, you stop giving it power. And that's when real peace begins. Most people think silence means you don't have anything to say. They assume if you're not responding, it's because you're weak, unsure, or trying to avoid confrontation. But silence, real intentional silence, isn't avoidance. It's emotional self-discipline. It's understanding that not every opinion needs your defense, not every insult deserves your energy, and not every moment requires a reaction. See, when someone tries to provoke you, they're not always looking for truth. They're looking for control. They want to see if they can pull you into their storm. Because when you react, you give them power. You give them permission to lead the conversation, the emotion, and the tone. But when you stay quiet, when you stay still, you're telling them, you don't control my peace. And that's silence. That's power. There's a difference between being quiet out of fear and being silent out of strength. One hides, the other leads. Silence that comes from strength says, I know my truth. I don't need to convince you of it. It's when you've reached a point where you value peace over proving. You no longer need to explain who you are to people committed to misunderstanding you. That's emotional growth. Think about it like this. Every time you react to someone's negativity, you're feeding it, you're giving it oxygen. And that fire, no matter how small, grows stronger because of your attention. But silence starves it. It's the refusal to participate in drama disguised as conversation. It's walking away with your dignity intact and your energy protected. The hardest part about mastering silence is resisting the urge to defend yourself. Because our natural instinct is to explain, to prove, to justify. But the truth doesn't need a debate. It doesn't need a speech. It stands on its own. And sometimes your silence says everything they need to hear, that you've outgrown the argument, that you've outgrown the need to win every battle. Let me tell you something important. Silence doesn't mean nothing is happening. In fact, silence is often where the most powerful shifts occur. Because while everyone else is busy reacting, you're observing. You're reading the situation, understanding the tone, and choosing your response, not out of emotion, but out of intention. You're not just reacting to what was said, you're understanding why it was said. And that's emotional intelligence at work. There's this quiet confidence that comes when you realize you don't have to chase being understood. People will interpret you based on their own lens, their own insecurities, and their own emotional limits. You can't control that, but you can control what you give them access to. Silence becomes your filter. It separates what deserves your peace from what drains it. And it's not about bottling things up. It's about directing your energy with precision. It's knowing that your emotions are powerful, but they're not public property. You don't have to express everything you feel to validate that you feel it. Sometimes the strongest statement you can make is a calm face in a chaotic room. That kind of composure, it commands respect without demanding it. You'll notice too that silence makes people reveal themselves. When you stop reacting, when you stop feeding the noise, you start seeing who's genuinely communicating and who's just trying to control the room. People who rely on manipulation, guilt, or intimidation can't stand silence. It exposes them. They need your reaction to validate their chaos. And when you don't give it, they lose their balance. That's when the power shifts, not because you spoke louder, but because you stood quieter. Now, don't get me wrong, silence isn't passive. It's not sitting back and doing nothing. It's strategic. It's choosing your timing, your tone, your truth. It's taking the time to respond rather than react. And in that pause, you create space. Space for peace, space for clarity, and space for strength to grow. Every moment you choose silence over reaction, you're strengthening your emotional muscle. You're training yourself to respond from a place of wisdom instead of impulse. And that's what separates people who live in chaos from those who lead with calm. So the next time someone tries to pull you into an argument, remember this: not everything that demands your attention deserves your energy. Your silence is not weakness. It's self-respect. And when you learn to control what you feed, You stop giving power to anything that doesn't feed you back. Emotional detachment gets a bad reputation. People hear that phrase and instantly think it means being cold, distant, or uncaring. But that's not what it is. Detachment isn't about shutting down your emotions. It's about understanding them so deeply that they no longer control you. It's the space between what happens and how you choose to respond. It's clarity in motion. When you start to detach emotionally, you're not saying, I don't care. You're saying, I care, but I won't carry. There's a difference. Because when you carry everything, every rude comment, every unfair opinion, every ounce of someone else's frustration, you lose yourself in their chaos. And that's not peace. That's emotional exhaustion. Detachment allows you to draw the line between your feelings and theirs. It's realizing that's your storm, not mine. Here's the truth. You can't control other people's behavior, but you can control how deeply it touches you. You can listen to someone without absorbing their tone. You can witness disrespect without internalizing it. That's the skill, standing in the middle of noise, but refusing to let it dictate your emotional state. Because when you carry other people's emotions, you become a mirror of their dysfunction. When you detach, you become a reflection of your own discipline. Sometimes emotional detachment looks like not replying right away. Sometimes it looks like walking away from a conversation that's going nowhere. Sometimes it's choosing not to correct every lie or defend every misunderstanding, because you understand that peace isn't found in proving your point. It's found in protecting your balance. And let me be clear, it takes practice. Detachment isn't natural at first, especially if you're used to caring deeply, giving endlessly, or fixing constantly. The more empathy you have, the harder it is to detach. But that's why it's so powerful. You're not numbing yourself. You're learning boundaries. You're learning that you can love people and still not let their chaos live rent free in your head. Think about how many times you've left a conversation frustrated, not because of what was said, but because of how much you let it get to you. That's the emotional hook. People who lack self-awareness throw out emotional bait, hoping you'll bite. Detachment is when you stop biting. It's when you recognize that not every situation needs a reaction, not every disagreement needs resolution, and not every problem is yours to fix. Detachment gives you your emotional power back. You stop being dragged into every argument or feeling responsible for every mood around you. You learn that someone else's anger doesn't require your anxiety, and someone else's silence doesn't mean you did something wrong. You stop trying to read between the lines, and instead you just read what's there, and that's it. When you detach, you start to see clearly. The fog lifts. You can see people for who they are, not for who you're emotionally hoping they'll be. You recognize patterns without the confusion of attachment. You make decisions based on logic, not pressure. And most importantly, you protect your peace like it's sacred, because it is. The beauty of detachment is that it gives you emotional breathing room. You can finally feel things without drowning in them. You can experience disappointment without despair. You can care without overextending. And the irony is, the more you detach, the more compassion you actually develop, because you're no longer reacting from pain, you're responding from peace. People might not understand it at first. They'll say you've changed, that you're distant, that you don't care the way you used to. But what they're really saying is, I can no longer manipulate your emotions the way I used to. And that's okay. Growth makes others uncomfortable. But peace isn't supposed to be understood by everyone. It's supposed to be lived by you. So when the world gets loud and people try to pull you into emotional chaos, take a breath. Remind yourself that their feelings are theirs to manage. You don't have to own what doesn't belong to you. Detachment isn't cold. It's clarity. It's the art of protecting your calm in a world that profits off your reaction. When emotions rise, calm feels like the hardest choice to make. You feel that heat in your chest, that urge to defend yourself, to speak louder so they'll finally understand your side. But here's what most people miss. Calm isn't weakness, it's command. It's not about being passive. It's about being powerful enough to stay centered when someone's trying to throw you off balance. Calm doesn't mean you agree. It means you choose not to lose yourself trying to be heard. Every time you stay calm in the middle of chaos, you're having a conversation of power without saying a word, because calm doesn't just change the tone of the room. It changes the energy. When someone's yelling and you respond with composure, you're teaching them what energy you'll allow around you. You're showing them that their storm can rage, but it won't move you. And that silent confidence, it disarms people more than any argument ever could. See, people expect reaction. They expect you to match their tone, raise your voice, or defend yourself immediately. They feed off that emotional exchange because it validates their chaos. But when you stay calm, when you pause and look them in the eye without rushing to respond, it creates discomfort because calm can't be controlled. It's unpredictable in the best way. It forces others to reflect on their own behavior. It's like standing in front of a mirror. Your calm becomes their reflection, and suddenly they're confronted with their own lack of control. That's why calm people are often misunderstood. The world reads your composure as indifference when in reality, it's the highest form of emotional intelligence. You've learned that you can't argue someone into awareness. You can only demonstrate it. Think about the last time someone tried to provoke you. Maybe they rolled their eyes, raised their tone, or said something they knew would sting. That moment right there, that's your training ground, because calm isn't built in peaceful moments. It's built in tension. It's built when you're triggered, but you choose not to take the bait. It's built when you remind yourself, I can't control them, but I can control me. And that control is where your peace lives. The more you practice calm, the stronger your inner authority becomes. You stop reacting out of impulse and start responding with intention. You start realizing that not every situation deserves your explanation. Not every attack needs a defense. Sometimes silence and a steady breath say more than words ever could. Calm is contagious too. When you enter a heated situation and you don't match the chaos, you lower the emotional temperature. People start adjusting to your energy instead of you adjusting to theirs. That's leadership. That's power. Because real authority isn't about dominance. It's about direction. You're directing the energy of the moment, guiding it back to peace. The trick is not to confuse calm with suppression. Calm doesn't mean you ignore your emotions. It means you manage them. You still feel anger, frustration, disappointment, but you choose not to let those emotions speak for you. You let them move through you instead of move you. That's the difference. That's growth. It's not easy, especially when someone's disrespecting you or pushing your limits. But every time you stay calm, you teach yourself emotional patience. You prove to yourself that your peace is not negotiable. And that lesson, it spills into every part of your life, your relationships, your work, your daily interactions. You become the person who doesn't get pulled into drama because you've mastered the art of detachment and direction. And the truth is, calm people aren't born that way. They've just learned through experience that overreacting never changes the outcome. It only changes your peace. They've realized that sometimes the most powerful statement you can make is your self-control. So when someone tries to shake you, remember your calm is the loudest voice in the room. You don't need to prove your strength through volume. You prove it through restraint. The one who controls the tone controls the conversation, and the one who controls themselves controls everything. Every reaction you give is a transaction. You're trading your energy, your peace, your attention for something. The question is, what are you getting back in return? Most people don't stop to think before they react. Someone says something triggering, and before they even process it, they're already defending, explaining, arguing. That's emotional autopilot. But when you pause before you participate, you interrupt that cycle. You take back control of the transaction. You decide whether that exchange is worth your peace. See, reacting quickly feels good in the moment. It's instant validation. You get to prove a point, correct a lie, stand your ground. But most of the time, that reaction doesn't solve anything. It just adds fuel to the fire. It keeps you stuck in the very energy you're trying to rise above. That's why the pause is so powerful. It's not weakness, it's strategy. It's saying, let me check in with myself before I cash out my peace. When you pause, you create distance between the emotion and the response. You give yourself time to see what's really going on. Are they trying to have a conversation, or are they trying to pull you into chaos? Is this worth your time? Or are you about to invest in something that gives you nothing back but regret? That little moment of silence is where wisdom lives. It's the space where calm is built and self-respect is protected. The pause doesn't have to be long. Sometimes it's just one deep breath, 1 second where you remind yourself that you're not obligated to respond immediately. You can listen, observe, and still choose peace, because your silence is not an absence of words. It's the presence of control. And here's the thing. People who thrive on drama hate the pause. They want a reaction. They want to see you flustered, defensive, emotionally off balance. They want to feed on that quick, heated response because that's how they stay in control. But when you pause, when you don't give them that emotional currency, they run out of fuel. They can't play the game if you refuse to move your piece. That pause also helps you separate what's emotional from what's intentional. Sometimes people say things to hurt you. Sometimes they say things out of their own pain. And sometimes they're just projecting their insecurity onto you. Without that pause, you take it personally. You carry their pain like it's your own. But with that pause, you can see it for what it is. You recognize this isn't about me. This is about them. And that realization alone saves you so much unnecessary suffering. Pausing before you participate doesn't mean you let people walk all over you. It means you choose the right time to respond, and you respond with intention, not impulse. You don't throw your energy at every situation just to feel seen or understood. You save it for moments that actually matter. That's emotional maturity. Knowing that silence isn't surrender, it's selection. You're selecting where your energy goes, who gets your voice, and what gets your time. And here's something most people don't realize: the pause makes your words carry more weight. When you finally do speak, people listen because you've shown that you don't waste words, that your calm is deliberate. You've taught them that when you do respond, it's thoughtful, not reactive. That kind of composure commands respect. It doesn't have to demand it. It's not easy, though, especially when you're dealing with people who constantly push your buttons. It takes practice. You'll slip sometimes, you'll react out of emotion, and that's okay. The goal isn't perfection, it's progress. Every time you pause instead of react, you're rewiring your emotional pattern. You're strengthening your control muscle. And over time, that becomes your new normal. You start to notice how peaceful it feels to not engage in every argument, how freeing it is to not let someone's bad mood decide your day. You realize that peace isn't found in avoiding people. It's found in managing your reactions to them. That's what the pause gives you: space to choose peace even when chaos is begging for your attention.
Yeah.
So the next time someone tries to pull you into their storm, stop for a moment, breathe, ask yourself, is this worth my energy? Because once you spend that energy, you can't get it back. And when you learn to pause before you participate, you start making emotional investments that actually grow your peace instead of draining it. There comes a point in your life when you realize you don't owe everyone an explanation, not for your boundaries, not for your peace, not for walking away. Because the truth is, some people don't want closure. They want control. They want to keep you explaining, justifying, defending, because as long as you're doing that, they still have your energy. And when you finally stop explaining, when you choose to walk away quietly, that's when they lose their hold. Walking away isn't weakness. It's wisdom. It's knowing the difference between who's trying to understand you and who's just trying to drain you. It's realizing that not everyone deserves access to your calm, your kindness, or your clarity. And you don't have to make a big announcement about it. You don't have to send one last message or prove your point. You just go peacefully, confidently, and without a word. See, there's a certain kind of strength in walking away without turning it into a scene. It means you've outgrown the need for validation. You no longer need someone to see your side to know you did the right thing. You no longer chase closure from people who weren't honest enough to give it in the first place. You've made peace with the fact that sometimes silence is the only closure you'll ever get, and that's okay. Because when you stop explaining yourself to the wrong people, you give yourself back the energy to grow. You stop wasting your breath trying to make the unreasonable understand reason. You stop pouring from a cup that they were never planning to fill back. It's not about arrogance. It's about self-respect. You can forgive someone and still walk away. You can care about someone and still choose peace over proximity. That's maturity. There's this moment that happens when you finally walk away. It's quiet, but powerful. It's like your soul exhales. You realize that all that noise you were trying to manage wasn't yours to hold. And once you let it go, everything starts to make sense. You start sleeping better, thinking clearer. You realize that silence was never empty. It was full of answers you couldn't hear over the chaos. Walking away doesn't mean you don't feel pain. It just means you've decided that pain is temporary, but peace is worth protecting. You start valuing your emotional health more than your desire to be understood. And that's not selfish. That's survival. You can't heal in the same place that broke you. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to quietly step away. The hardest part is resisting the urge to explain why you're leaving, because we're wired to want people to understand. We think if we explain it well enough, they'll finally get it and maybe they'll change. But people who truly respect you won't need an explanation, and the ones who don't respect you won't believe one anyway. Either way, your silence says everything that words can't. And here's something powerful. When you walk away in silence, you shift the dynamic. You remove the audience they were performing for. You take away the reaction they were depending on. You no longer participate in the story they're trying to control. That's how you reclaim your peace, by no longer showing up for roles that require you to shrink yourself. Sometimes people will call you distant or cold for walking away quietly. That's okay. Let them.